in order to actually scale, you have to build an infrastructure to scale. And the infrastructure requires people and processes, right? And automation. So to build out processes, to build out automation, to put people in place, that costs money. And then when you put the money in, guess what? You got to wait to get the return. And depending on your business, that could be weeks, that could be months, that could be years in some case before that money from what you did starts coming in. So this is where having access to capital becomes so important. If you don't have access to capital, then what ends up happening is you put all the money in to build the infrastructure for scaling. Then it comes time to scale. And guess what? There's no money left to actually scale the advertising, marketing, and grow the business. So, again, having access to the capital really becomes essential, not even just for survival, but then also on the other side when you're really trying to grow and scale the business.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing. And you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today, Ty Crandall, an internationally known speaker and author, a podcast host, and a business credit expert. With over 18 years of financial experience, Ty is recognised as an authority in business credit building, business credit scoring, and business credit repair. If there's anything you want to know about business credit, what it is, how to get it, then Ty is your man. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where you'll find a host of free and exceptionally useful information to help you transform your marketing. You can access the Transformational Marketing Hub by visiting innovabiz.co/VIP. If you don't yet have an account, click the blue Take a Peek Inside button. As I said, it's free and exceptionally useful. In our discussion today, Ty talked to me about how to find out if you have a credit rating for your business. We talked about how to establish and enhance your business lendability, and where to get business credit and the 3 C's that lending agencies consider. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Ty Crandall. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today, all the way from Tampa in Florida, the USA, Ty Crandall, who's an internationally known speaker. He's an author. He's also host of a podcast show, and he's a business credit expert. So he has over 18 years of financial experience, and he's recognized as an authority in business credit building, business credit scoring, and business credit repair. So welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Ty. It's a real privilege to have you as a guest.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Josh Elledge, who we had on episode 158 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested that we interview you, Ty. So big hello to Josh.
I love Josh. Hey, Josh.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun interviewing him. So go check that out if you haven't done so already. Now, Ty, you're also an author of 2 popular books on credit named Perfect Credit and Business Credit Decoded. You've often been interviewed and continue to do so, I imagine, on radio and TV and news shows and magazines, and you serve as the CEO at Credit Suite, where you've helped create and grow one of the biggest and most credible business coaching operations in the US. I'm really looking forward to exploring the topic of business credit much deeper today. I've already learned a lot just by researching all the information you've put out there in preparation for this podcast, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot more today. But before we start talking about all the things business and financing and credit, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get to where you are today, and what were some of the pivotal moments in that journey?
I went right from high school to the military. I just didn't know what I wanted to do out of high school, and I going right into college just didn't make sense when I didn't have any life experience. So went in the military, was in the Air Force for 4 years, and got out of the military and quickly found myself in financial services. My dad was worked in a bank and was an accountant. So I was around that growing up, and I loved it. And so I worked a lot with financial services and finally opened my own mortgage company, and it took off. It exploded. We were doing really well until I found myself exactly at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was in the mortgage industry when the whole economy collapsed here as a result of the mortgage industry. So, I saw firsthand what it was like to build a successful business. Then had the business completely went under and failed, because everything changed. I mean, we couldn't even close loans. And I saw that. And as I went through that process, I personally guaranteed everything for the business. I had credit that reported on my personal business credit report that was used for the business. Same mistakes a lot of people make. And those things caused almost a personal bankruptcy on my end, because what happened was when those things occurred, it wiped out my personal credit. They wiped out my personal finances. So I would rebuild. I'd open a consumer credit company and help there and wrote a book on that. And then along the way, somebody mentioned to me business credit. Several people asked about it of our clients. And I didn't know what it was. I looked at it online. There was no information. I mean, you just could not find anything anywhere about it. And when I finally dug deep enough to figure out what it was, I just realized it was a problem that could have helped me as an entrepreneur. I became frustrated that nobody else was talking about this. And I just kind of decided to become the advocate that would just tell everybody about what business credit is and how the process is and help everybody so they could avoid the pain that I had.
That's I really like that. And a lot of the guests we've had on the shows have kind of had a journey where they've encountered a real issue that they've had to solve for themselves and then decided, well, there's nobody that actually helps with that problem. And I'm sure a lot of other people have the same problem. So let's develop, or let's take the solution that I've built for myself and let's help other people by sharing that. So I really love that. Yeah. So I'm curious because you mentioned along there about your journey and how you almost went into personal bankruptcy. I wonder if businesses and business owners in particular, there's sometimes this issue around being risk averse. And I wonder if it comes back to that they're kind of putting their own money on the line. And so they're risk averse. And so that kind of hinders the business growth in many ways.
Well, look, I think so. I mean, what we find about entrepreneurs is this. We are risk takers. We love risk. And we don't really do the best at thinking about repercussions of our actions, consequences, potential failure. We just don't. We charge ahead as far and fast as we possibly can. And so it's interesting because, for me, I really talk about business credit because I lost everything because I didn't have it. And so personal guarantees are a really big deal for me. But after many years of talking about this, I started going on stages and just asking people excitingly, how many people will expect to fail in this room? And I threw my arm up in the air and I would notice that nobody would raise their hands. And that, that's interesting to me because, I'll sit in rooms of hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs and not one of them will raise their hand. But, of course, the statistic is that like 1 out of 2 of them aren't going to make it. And so, and most of them won't even make it through like the next 2 years. And so what I've learned is that you just can't talk to entrepreneurs about what happens when they fail. Our minds don't work that way. If so, we just wouldn't be entrepreneurs. So that's what I find.
Okay. All right. Well, what exactly is business credit then, and how is it different to other forms of credit that perhaps are more well known?
Well, most of us are all familiar with consumer credit, right? I mean, we get credit with the reporting agencies, and depending on what country we're in, those reporting agencies are a little bit different. And we use that credit to get credit cards and qualify for loans and auto vehicle financing and all this other stuff. Business credit, or otherwise known as corporate credit, is just exactly the same thing. It's just for a business. It's credit that's used for a business obtains the credit. The more credit they get, the higher the limit. It's on the revolving credit cards. The easier it is to qualify for loans and get financing. But this business credit profile is in the business name. It's linked to the business, not the business owner. So as a result, the business owner is able to separate all their liability. They're able to obtain the credit regardless of their consumer credit quality. And it's just much easier and faster to get than many other kind of financing out there that the business owners around the world just can't qualify for.
So your advice then to anyone in business would be keep those things separate and don't mix them up
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that every business needs to have business credit, and if you think, and the problem is that Entrepreneur Magazine reports 90% of business owners don't even know it exists. So what happens in the business credit world is eventually a business gets so big, it happens about 5 to 10 million range. A business gets so big that you bring in financial savvy people. You bring in chief financial officers, you bring in, accountants and controllers. And then these people know about this, the controllers.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they start helping you separate the liability because it has to be done. The problem is the average small business owner doesn't know anything about this. So the whole structures worked based on the ignorance of us small business owners, and then only the bigger businesses that can afford to have the finance people that know about it. So what I find is that every business needs to get this. I mean, not having credit for your business established is just as problematic as not having consumer credit. Like, you can only make it so far in life that way. It's the same thing with the business. But here's the kicker. The problem is that in the business world, when the reporting agencies know your business exists, they know your name and address and the industry you're in, they automatically create a credit report for you and automatically give you a failing score. And we are not used to this. Like, we're used to having to mess up to get bad credit. In the business world, just because you don't have it, you're assessed as extremely high risk. So it's something you can't do. If you don't build business credit, your ability to get any kind of capital is seriously hindered.
Okay, well, that raises the question then, how do you find out as a business owner what your credit score is? And secondly, given that if you haven't checked before, it's likely to be a fail, how do you go about bringing the score up?
Sure. Well, I think the very first thing you want to do is we've got a link on our website, creditsuite.com/reports. And if you go to creditsuite.com/reports, that's just a free way to check the main reporting agencies to even see if a profile for you exists or it doesn't. You just simply enter your name and some business information. Depending on where you are, those links may not work. You might have to try another link based on the country that you're in. But then that lets you do a free check just to see if anybody knows or if you have anything reported now. If you do, with any of the reporting agencies, you probably want to set up credit monitoring with that reporting agency to see what's going on. NAV is a great company that helps you access those business credit reports, which is NAV NAV, and they're much cheaper than what you'd actually be able to get if you went directly to the reporting agency. So do a free check to see what pops up. If nothing pops up, you don't have credit. If it does tell you that you have trade lines, well, then pull your report and see what's on there.
Okay. And then given you find out that your credit rating is a fail, or perhaps it's at a point, or it's not established yet. How do you go about establishing it, or bringing it from fail to somewhere where you can get business credit?
Yeah, and that's a series of steps, and we'll kind of maybe talk through one at a time because I'm sure you'll have questions as we go. But if you're thinking about getting money in general, the very first thing you want to do is you need to set up your business where it's fundable. Because what happens is a lot of people get denied for loans, credit cards, credit lines, and they don't know why, or they think it's because they don't qualify. But the reality is what's happening around the world is just obscene fraud that we've never seen before. And so the result is that a lot of these banks that we're walking into to apply with, they're not denying us because we don't qualify. They're denying us because they're seeing discrepancies between our application and other data that they possess that leads them to believe there's potential fraud and the application gets denied. The other thing is a lot of businesses just don't look credible on paper. They're making a bunch of mistakes that make them look like they lack credibility. And then in that case, lenders and credit issuers think that they could possibly be a brand new startup or, a dreamer, not a serious business. And so they deny them. So the very first thing is you really want to work on fundability. You want to understand that credit issuers and lenders have secret set of standards that you need to meet. If you meet them, then we all know what happens. In a lot of cases, you get automated approvals. It's like instant automated approvals because you checked all the boxes in that the system, approval system. But the reverse is the denial, where if you don't meet the criteria, it gets pushed to a manual underwriter. You usually get that dreaded message that you'll hear by mail in 7 to 10 days. And I don't know about you, but that never ends up well. I always get that mean letter that tells me I didn't get approved. So that all happens because of these credibility standards. So, first of all, set up your business name, set up your entity. Once you've done so, get a real physical business address. If you don't have a business address, you can consider what's called a virtual address, which is all around the world. And virtual addresses are places where you could rent a mailbox without renting a physical address. Use a home address at last resort, but make sure you avoid P.O. boxes, UPS addresses as well. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have a website set up. You want to have a professional email set up, not a Gmail type email, professional email. Get any licenses that you need for the business and set up your phone numbers as well. Get a phone number, get a fax number, make sure the phone number is toll free, get it listed where it's available online in online directories like 411. That's one of the basic checks they use. If you've done those things, you've done a pretty good job of establishing your fundability. And then you want to go ahead and get your DUNS number. You could still go to creditsuite.com/reports, get your DUNS number with Dun & Bradstreet. It's completely free to get. That sets up your profile with them. And once you've done so, well, then you covered the first step. You really set up your fundability where you have the best chance of getting approved. And then it's time to move on and start getting business credit.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So knowing the system in terms of how the approvals operate is really critical there, and knowing what the steps are to take to get ticks in the boxes to go through that system is important as well, and you've just outlined those for us. So now you mentioned that once a business gets to a certain stage, then they employ people that have this expertise and that know how to navigate their way through all the world of business credit and so on. So how do you suggest? I mean, it's about setting up processes for me in terms of running a business. So there's got to be a financial process here. How do you suggest people go about setting up that financial process in a way that, first of all, they know when it's time to get credit, and of course you've just outlined for us the start of that, which is get yourself credit worthy first before you need it. But then when's the trigger point to say, okay, I'm going to need money. I'm going to need money to do something. So when do you go to business credit?
Well, the next thing really, the next step of that process after you've set up that fundability is you want to start getting real credit. Now I think you do this simultaneous at the same time of getting funding, and we'll talk about that. So once you set up that fundability, the next thing is you need to get accounts that actually report on those business credit reports. And there's places that, like Uline, Quill, Granger, Gimplers, that are available around the world. A lot of these type of vendors that report to the business credit reporting agencies, and they'll give you credit when you have none. And you have about 5 of those accounts. Then you want to move on and you're getting real revolving store credit. So you're getting Home Depot and Apple, and you're getting, Lowe's and Best Buy and Amazon, Walmart. All that kind of credit becomes available with pretty good size limits, 10,000 or higher. And it's all available without a personal guarantee. You're not liable without a personal credit check. It's all in the business name, as long as you have those handful of initial accounts reporting. And then you just continue to build business credit. So the next step beyond that is with about 10 to 14 accounts, you can start getting auto vehicle financing. You can get Visa card, MasterCard, American Express. You can get cash credit. And then that's the final tier of business credit building. So the way I look at it is after you set up that fundability, you start getting money right away that's revolving credit. And once you've set up the fundability, then you can move on to the other stage that happens as you're building business credit, which is to just, see all the other capital that's available for you out there.
So just to check that first level you mentioned, getting signing up with the names you mentioned in terms of credit, is that like a 30-day payment, like an account?
Yeah, those are called net. They can be. Those are usually called net accounts. They could be net 15, net 30, net 45, which in that case would mean you'd have 15, 30, or 45 days to pay the bill. It's not a revolving credit. So that's not the kind of credit that you really want to get. That's kind of the rite of passage to the revolving credit, right? I mean, you come in, you get a $500 account, you buy $100 worth of office supplies, you pay it back within a month, they report it, and that gives you what's called a trade line, an account reporting on your business credit report. And the more of those trade lines you have, the more credit becomes available for you. So in the beginning, you're buying stuff, you're paying it back within 30 days typically, and you're building that initial credit. Then you immediately move on in that second step to getting revolving credit. And that's credit that you could just pay a minimum payment on the balance, not have to pay the whole balance off within a set time period.
Okay, I understand. All right. Well, so how fast can a business go through this whole process and build their credit rating to a point where, they might be able to fund a significant project?
Well, it really depends on many different factors. But typically, if somebody's working, one of our clients, we're seeing 4 to 6 months to get to the end. If somebody comes to us that's not a client, we see 2 years as the average. And that's just because, look, you're going to come into a lot of roadblocks along the way. If you don't know how to get past those, it just eats up a bunch of time. But the process can be done all the way to the end in as little as 6 months. And don't forget, along that way, you're getting money. The first account you're getting within the first month. So you're getting revolving credit along the way, but to get to the very final tier takes about 4 to 6 months.
Right. Okay. So, so it's a fairly short-term strategy in terms of positioning your business to be able to get credit and, perhaps grow beyond where you want to grow before or where you thought you could grow before.
Look, capital is what holds us back. And when we look at business failure, we see the two reasons are because of management's mistakes, and we see that lack of access to capital. So if we look at a company like Twitter has enough cash on hand to keep burning their money for 412 years before they run out. So most businesses can't do that, right? And so that really is the problem. Twitter is a perfect example. They're making all kinds of bad mistakes. The company is losing money, and they have the money to be able to lose. But in a normal business, the management makes mistakes because, let's be honest, none of us have any clue what we're doing. As entrepreneurs, we just literally figure stuff out as we go. It's why we love doing what we do. And so what happens is when you make mistakes, if you don't have that money to make up for the mistake that you made, the slow month, the air conditioning unit goes out, it just wipes out business owners. So what we find is, you got to have that available credit, but you have that available credit ready to be able to afford yourself that time that you need to get past slow months or surprises or mistakes that you made. Well, that's really what it comes down to be able to grow and thrive. So it just takes capital. There's a reason that Apple borrows billions of dollars when they're sitting on billions of dollars. Every one of the largest successful companies that exist has done so because they're using other people's money to get there. And the better you are at using other people's money, the better chance you have of growing the business faster.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, the other people's money. And I think I remember vaguely it was a personal investing seminar that used that term as well, and saying that was really the smart way to do it. So essentially at the very core of it, that might be taking the bank's money to buy a home or buy a property and allowing that property to increase in value so that you get the benefits of the capital gain. And at some point you pay back the initial loan, which still is of the value before the capital gain.
Yeah, look, it's just a different world. On the personal side, we're taught no debt, right? Stay away from debt. Debt's bad. Yeah. But in the business world, if you want to grow fast, you do it with debt or equity. You're either selling equity to get cash injected in your company, or you're taking on debt. And if you don't do those two, no big deal. You can still grow the business, but it's at a snail's pace. So if we look, for example, at our current company, we went up 220% growth last year. Well, you can't do 200+% growth if you don't have capital to be able to put into the business to make that growth happen, right? Because what happens is if you slowly grow the business, you have to slowly have enough money to grow. But if you could throw cash into the business to scale what's working, then you could just grow really fast. So I think it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. We're trying to grow quickly, and that takes capital to do so. Other people have lifestyle businesses. They don't even care about growing the business. But money really is important to grow and scale, and it also becomes really important just as a safety net as well, in case, you don't have the money for the things you need, which is, again, what puts most people in the hole.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, I think you touched on it very early on, but I'd like to explore a little bit more, is how do you ensure that your personal assets and personal liabilities don't impact on the business side of it and the business credit?
Well, the answer used to be pretty simple. You just don't put like your identifying number personally on the application. So in the United States, it used to be the Social Security number, right? But nowadays, they've changed it because we have a money laundering laws here, which most countries like yours already have had, that make them provide an identification number from the actual owner. So the answer is simple. You apply by phone, apply by fax, and you let them know you're not authorizing a credit check. You're not authorizing a guarantee. And when you do that, then what they understand, what they're basically doing then is they'll even tell you, they say, look, I can do what you're describing, but you're going to have a better chance of getting approved if you have your personal stuff involved too. So what and they're right. If you don't have established business credit, that's correct. But if you've established your business credit, as you and I talked about, then what will happen is you're forcing them to go pull your corporate credit profile instead of personal. And then if that's strong enough, their computers will automatically approve the application without you needing you there as the guarantor. And that's what's important to know. When you look at the definition of a personal guarantee for a business is needed when the business is not strong enough to stand on its own. And so, and we know this, right? I mean, we're familiar with Dell computers. We don't think Michael Dell's providing a personal guarantee for Dell's debt. That's ridiculous. So we understand that at some point a business grows out of that. That's how it grows out of that. That's how you get away from that personal guarantee. You build the credit for the business, and then lenders and credit issuers don't even care about, especially credit issuers, they don't even care about your personal stuff because the business is strong enough to stand on its own.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, you mentioned earlier about a lot of the places to go to start building that credit profile. I'm curious because many of those names are unfamiliar to me, and I suspect that they're US companies. So can you tell us some more about what types of credit that lenders look for to decide when they're approving or not approving the business for a loan?
Sure. What it really comes down to is they're not looking for a certain type of credit. What they're looking for, what their computers are looking for, is a number of accounts primarily. So what drives it is the number of accounts you have reporting on the business credit report primarily. Second thing is credit score. Your credit score reflects how you pay. So if you get accounts with credit issuers that report, which, by the way, that's what matters. I threw off some accounts here in the United States and Canada that are popular, but the reality is there's vendor accounts all over the world that can work for business to be able to get that credit reported to the reporting agencies. Once that credit reports, how many trade lines are there will determine how much credit they continue to get. And then their scores will also be a factor as well. So it's important to make sure that those bills are paid as agreed.
Yeah, well, that's really important. I mean, it's sort of like the credit card when you pay the credit card off in the time allocated, then not only do you save, I think it's about 18% here at the moment, interest charges, and then there's a penalty charge if you don't pay on time, but also you preserve your credit rating. Yep,
makes sense.
All right, so in terms of those business credit reports, then is it only the business owner that gets to see those, or how public are they?
No, and that's really the scary thing is that, consumer credit, typically in a lot of countries, somebody has to have your permission to get it. In the United States, we're governed by a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which says somebody needs permissible purpose, or basically my permission, to even be able to get my credit. But in the business world, it's public information. It's not regulated. So as a matter of fact, when you go to get your credit report, the very first question they're going to ask you is, what do you want? You want your credit report or credit report for another business? So it's very accessible business data. And that's why I say it's so important that you build business credit, because it's not just about getting money. It's not just about building your credit profile to get the best terms on that money, although that stuff is important. Your business credit profile is your reputation. It's something your suppliers, your credit issuers, and your lenders can all see. But it's also something your prospects, your clients, and your competitors can see as well. So you really want to make sure you establish that business credit, because you don't want to lose business and have a front-facing credit profile that reflects badly on your business and your reputation.
Yeah, that's really good advice and really important thing to be aware of. So in terms of, let's say, credit card at stores, because that is something that I'm certainly very familiar with, and other people probably as well, more familiar than business credit profiles and business credit loans. So how do you go about getting a business credit card at stores as a business?
Well, it really comes down to what we kind of talked about. You want to make sure that business is set up fundable, where you're fundable. You want to make sure you get some initial accounts to build that initial trade lines on the business credit report and score. Once you have about 3 to 5 of those accounts, then you move on to the store credit. Then you move on to credit at most retailers will start to give it to you, whether it be Office Depot or Apple or Chevron or Amazon or Walmart or Costco or Best Buy. I mean, most of the retailers will offer you business credit once you have that 3 to 5 accounts initially reporting.
Yeah, and you suggest that that's a key part of the process to increase your credit score?
Absolutely. I mean, there's 3 things you really need. You need to get those initial vendor accounts reporting. Those are called trade lines when they report. When those trade lines hit, that will establish your credit profile, and how you pay the bills, what establishes your credit score. Once you have that trifecta of trade lines reporting that gave you a profile, that give you a score, that is what's needed really to then start moving through and continuing to build more and more business credit.
All right. So once a business has established this system and established their business credit rating and gets to the point of, okay, I need to fund this project, I need a loan, what are the best places for a business to get a loan as opposed to what we may think when we think as consumers?
Well, I think that a lot of us are conditioned that when we think about a loan, we immediately think about our bank. And the problem is that banks are the last place you want to go for money as a small business owner unless you're really well established. They're not even going to typically touch you unless you've been in business 3 years or more in most countries, because they understand that most businesses fail the first 3 years. So what they know is that a business that's been there about 3 to 5 years has the best chance for survival, 3 to 5 years or more. So what happens now as a result is there's all these alternative lending products that have now become available. And so what happens is lenders all around the world are now coming out with programs and saying, look, you don't need to go to your bank where you got to have all this collateral and cash flow and good credit and all these other things. What you need with us is a strength. And I call this the 3 C's formula. The strength could be, these are lendable strengths. It could be either cash flow, that you have good, consistent cash flow going into your business bank account every single month, and the business is growing, that money going in is increasing. The second thing is collateral. So you actually have collateral, which could be stocks or bonds, 401ks. It could be an IRA. It could be people owe you money in the business. It could be any of that kind of stuff. It could be equipment, commercial real estate, any of that. And then the third is credit. How is your personal credit? That could be used to get your credit lines as well. So the very first thing you have to do is figure out what is your lendable strength. Do you have good, consistent cash flow? Do you have collateral, or do you have good credit? And then depending on which of those you have will determine where you're going to go to get financing. And it's easier then, because then you could just type in cash flow financing, collateral financing, credit business financing. And you'll be able to find sources that will help you with all 3 of those, depending on the country that you're actually in. And then the more of those you have, the better chance you have of getting better loans. So if you have good credit and cash flow, well, then you're going to get longer term loans and lines of credit. And if you have a cash flow, credit, and collateral, well, then that's when you're going out and getting basically the bank loan.
Yeah, that's really neat. I like that. So that's you're very specific about what type of loan you want and what you're doing with it to decide where to get the money from, where to take the loan from.
And that's the problem. The problem right now isn't that there's no money. I mean, there's more money in the lending space for businesses than there ever has been. The problem is that now, because of the economy shift, so many of these alternative lenders is poured into the space, and they want you to apply with them. But they don't tell you on the website, hey, this is exactly what we need to get approved. And so now that you know, it's going to be easier just to go in and find the lenders that could lend based on your strength. Now, the other important thing to know is this is also where business credit comes in as well. Business credit is going to help you get approved for the financing, help you get the best terms and the most amount of money. But even if you don't have cash flow credit or collateral, you could still get business credit. So I call business credit a catch-all because everybody can get it. Like, I don't care what your scenario is. If you own a business, you can get it, but you don't have that luxury with loans and credit lines. With those, you have to have a lendable strength. With business credit, you don't.
Yeah. So tell us some more then about what sort of business should be thinking about this, because what you've said just then is that essentially any business can do that. And if somebody was listening to the 3 C's and thinking, well, I don't tick all those boxes, but yet you've just said that really anybody can get business credit, and it's just how you do that. So there's a couple of questions that come up there. But first of all, what sort of scenario should a business really be thinking seriously about getting business credit in?
Well, I think that, first of all, every business needs to have access to revolving credit. Credit cards and credit lines are no-brainers because we're not paying interest on them until we use them, right? So it's not like we paid points like we do with loans. It's not like we have a hefty payment for money we're not using. Revolving credit cards and credit lines are things every business should have because they cost you nothing if you're not using them. So I think every business should start building business credit right away and should access any kind of credit lines that are available. Outside of that, then I think it becomes about loans and financing. And when it comes to getting actual loans, you're only really doing that unless you have a specific purpose. And from what I've seen, this purpose really needs to be on growth and scaling. I mean, it's tough to get and borrow money for experimenting. So if you're going to borrow money to experiment, then, you should have 3 solid things are going to work that you could put the money into to grow the business while you're experimenting with the 1 or 2 things that you're not. But the bottom line is stay away from loans unless you're going to use the money for a specific purpose that's going to more than likely grow the revenues and profits of the business, and reserve that for when that happens. In the meantime, use the credit lines and credit cards because that revolving credit can carry you through and pay most of what you need to pay.
Great advice. So an example of that might be if someone started to scale a product that is successful, they know it's successful and they want to do more of it. So they've taken on board, let's say, twice the number of customers that are currently on that particular product or service, and they need to employ extra staff or extra resources to deliver the outcome. So there's an upfront cost for the employment or purchasing equipment, and that would make sense then to use credit to do that.
And this is why you need money to scale, because in order to actually scale, you have to build an infrastructure to scale. And the infrastructure requires people and processes, right? And automation. So to build out processes, to build out automation, to put people in place, that costs money. And then when you put the money in, guess what? You got to wait to get the return. And depending on your business, that could be weeks, that could be months, that could be years in some case before that money from what you did starts coming in. So this is where having access to capital becomes so important. If you don't have access to capital, then what ends up happening is you put all the money in to build the infrastructure for scaling. Then it comes time to scale. And guess what? There's no money left to actually scale the advertising, marketing, and grow the business. So, again, having access to the capital really becomes essential, not even just for survival, but then also on the other side when you're really trying to grow and scale a business.
Yeah, that's really clear to me. Hopefully that sort of made it clear for the listeners, because I think that often people get into a stage of the business is actually held back or stunted because they don't have the cash flow to do something that they've planned to do, which is almost a guaranteed success, but they just can't fund the growth.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I could keep talking all day, Ty. This is really fascinating, but I'm aware of the time. So I think it's a good point to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round. And it's designed to help our audience, who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field, with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully you'll give us some really insightful answers that will inspire the listeners to go and do something awesome today. So what's the number one thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Well, I think that one of the first things is that, you need to make sure that you're giving information and not selling. And I'm not sure if we call that innovative, but I think it is innovative because that really is the shift in what we're seeing with business. Businesses are going from trying to sell their stuff as they always have to now realizing that people in these newer generations don't want that. What people want is they want education. They want to be talking to people. They want, get the education so they could know, like, and trust who they're dealing with. And then they decide they want to do business with that company instead of that company selling them. I just see a huge shift there. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are still doing it wrong where they're trying to sell instead of educating. And if they flip the education, then what happens is they build a loyal tribe, loyal following. And then those people are coming back to them, and those people are buying from them. They're not really in a position where they have to sell them because the person already knows they know, like, and trust the company, wants to do business with them. So I think educating versus selling becomes one of the biggest things that I think business owners really need to focus on right now.
Yeah, well, you're certainly preaching to the converted here, and I hope that that's the same with our audience. But it definitely is a really important message, and I would say, yes, that is innovative because it's still not the norm. So people are still doing selling and holding back information. All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new products or new ideas?
I think you have to honor $10,000 time, and Perry Marshall talks about this topic where you have to really look at what you do in a day, and you have to be able to realize the stuff you're doing that's maybe $1, 10 or $10, $100, 10,000. And the 10,000 as an entrepreneur is all high level thinking time. So I spend substantial time of my day just thinking. I take off on Friday. I do not work in the office, and I spend a half a day just thinking. So I think building in time for high-level processing and thinking is really essential, because that's what happens. If you give your mind the problem you're dealing with or the solution, what you're trying to accomplish, or the goal of what you're trying to accomplish, your mind does a really good job of working with you to try to solve that problem and produce solutions if you give it enough time to do so. So it's really the key of just making sure that you understand the most valuable thing you really do as a business owner is that $10,000 an hour time, which is the time that you're just setting aside for high level thinking to strategize about what you do next.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and allowing yourself space from the day-to-day running of the business to do that is really important.
Yeah, and the other thing I've really learned along the way is that, there's sometimes the timing just is not right. Like, you're just beating your head against the wall to solve a problem. And the reality is you either don't have the information or resources you need to solve the problem. And so I've got very good at recognizing when I'm stuck and just walking away. And what happens is then somewhere down the road, something else pops up. I'm like, oh my gosh, well, that thing now could work perfectly. And so I see that all the time where, if you're really beating your head against the wall trying to solve a problem, maybe you don't have what's needed to solve that problem right now. Maybe you don't have what's needed to create that product you're thinking about creating. And then you just have to step back and wait. And, what I found is then something else becomes available in time that then makes that idea or that product viable. So another piece of advice that may be able to help.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I've certainly experienced that quite a lot. And the danger, of course, is that you spend a lot of time beating your head against that proverbial brick wall because you're stuck. And if you recognize that point of saying, well, okay, I'm going to park that for now, and allowing you to work on other stuff. And then at some point, like you say, the solution will become obvious because there'll be something else that comes up, a resource or some knowledge that you gain. And I've had that experience quite a lot. All right. So is there a resource or tool that you use most often?
Oh, man, there's a lot of them. I'm a big learner, I think, as a lot of entrepreneurs are. So I'm really big on Audible, because Audible, you can speed up, and some of those people are so slow. So I'm able to get through books pretty quick. That's probably one of the biggest resources I use outside of business because I'm constantly in books. In business, it's my CRM. It's Infusionsoft, our CRM. I'm really big on automation. I think that, a business maybe should be 80% automation, 20% manpower. And so we do a lot with automation through our Zendesk application and our Infusionsoft application. So for me, those absolutely have the most value.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good advice there. And I'm certainly a big fan of Audible, and I'm currently up to 2.2, and I listen at 2.5. Like you say, some people are pretty slow in talking, but it is a great resource, and I encourage everybody to at least take a look at it, because it essentially is audio books. And as Ty mentioned, you can speed up the audio so that you can listen at whatever speed you're capable of taking in for that particular book, which saves a huge amount of time. So when you see a book that is rated at 8 hours, let's say, for reading, well, I do that in less than 4 now. So that saves quite a bit of time, which, you can't save time, but you can actually do things quicker than others. And the automation in the business, that's another really important thing. And that's where I see technology really adding value, allowing you to automate things that really human intervention doesn't add value to anymore. So I think that's the important aspect. All right, what's the best way to keep a project or a client on track? So you were talking earlier about building that 6-month, or having that process, building that process over a 6-month timeline. What's the best way to keep a client on track in that?
Well, look, I think, we're really big on information through the process. I think that you have to look at what you're doing as a customer journey. There's a lot of stages to that customer journey. The customer's going through different psychological experiences at every stage of the journey. And I think you have to get really good at figuring out what they're bumping into at any point in the journey and helping them overcome it. So what we do, for example, is we're really big on understanding where they're getting stuck, and then we're putting them into an email sequence when clients enroll, and we're telling them, hey, you're possibly going to get stuck here. Here's how to avoid getting stuck. So we're basically intending what the problems are going to be, because we already know from past experience. And then we're answering problems, we're answering questions, we're answering objections, we're speaking to their psychological state. We know buyer's remorse is real. We know what causes that. So we're just speaking to what's going on with them before it actually occurs. And we do that through our emails. We do that through phone calls. We do that through our other medias like text and message. But I think that's important. I think that your typical business owner stops when the sale is done. And, all the statistics on this show that, somebody has a 5 to 20% chance of buying, and they have a 60 to 70% chance of buying if they've already bought from you before. A 5% increase in retention can account for a 25 to 100% increase in profit. So I just think business owners focus on the wrong thing. They're trying to focus on getting more people in the door instead of trying to focus on building a system on the back end to keep the people they have.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the one piece of advice that can go across any kind of business or at any time in any place. And one of the things that always annoys me is in the consumer space, a lot of the marketing comes up with, for new customers only, we're offering this particular discount or this particular incentive. And I always think, well, what about existing customers? Why reward people that you don't have a relationship, and not reward and penalize effectively the people you do have a relationship and that have been paying you money for all this time?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. All right. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I think I go back to education. I think that, the way that it is, if you want to differentiate yourself, then you need to get out there. You need to use social channels. You need to get out there. You need to teach about what you do. Take your inside secrets of how you do what you do and go tell them to everybody. It sounds crazy, but teach everybody how to do what you do. I think that that's really probably one of the most important things.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, in doing that yourself, you have helped people that if they decide to do it themselves, they could, but it might take them 2 years because they don't have all the nuances. And even though you teach people, you can't teach them to be the expert in that particular area, nor do they have the time to be the expert in that particular area because it's not their core business. So that's
what it comes down to.
To me, that's.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right, yeah. Well, a lot of people say counter that advice of education with, well, if I give away what I know, people won't need me. But I think that's actually the opposite is true.
Look, well, this is what I find is that if you teach everybody what you know, you're going to have two outcomes. You're going to have people that are going to go do it on themselves. Those people will become your absolute best referrers. They'll become your best testimonials. Those will become the people that get your back because they feel compelled to. You gave them all this goodwill with absolutely nothing being asked for in return. So, I mean, we have 0 lifetime complaints in our company's history, right? You can't find a complaint about us online from a client anywhere. And, I'm not saying it's because of this, but if a client ever were to complain online, the army of people that would come after and attack or then come behind them with reviews would be immense. And so that's it. Our Facebook group has 19,000 people in it. There are 35,000 engagements every month, 35,000 comments, likes, and posts in that group. Okay. So if I need anything, I go to that group that takes our free information and uses it to succeed. I tell my group I need it. And my group comes like an army to our defense to have our back. And then the other people are ones that want the faster path. Those are people that actually will buy. But what's interesting about those people is there's no selling those people. They just want to buy. They want to work with you. You're the guru. You're the expert. They know you. They like you. They trust you. They know you know what you're talking about. So all of that junk that makes selling somebody so difficult immediately goes away. And then you have a great product that somebody wants and they only want to work with you to get it. And it just changes the dynamic on selling entirely. So you can't lose by giving it away. Will people take and use it for themselves? Of course they will. But then they do feel compelled to give back. So that community is more valuable to you than what it's going to be that if you just don't teach and educate, never build a community. Think about it. I mean, if you never educate, you don't build a community. And if you educate, you build a community. So the community is the value there, and they'll provide you much more value than never creating a community and making a few more sales.
Yeah, that's great advice there. And, I really like the idea of, that's amazing, a 19,000 strong Facebook group as a community. And of course, if you do the right things by them, they're going to repay you. Now, they might not repay you through a business directly, but they'll certainly have you back, as you said.
Sure.
Great advice.
And if you look at that Facebook group, we make a lot of sales from that group. So if you think about it, we're giving away so much free information that people are coming and getting in our Facebook group in huge numbers. Facebook sees that people are coming into the group with huge numbers because they're getting free information. And so Facebook then shows the group to anybody that even comes close to typing in a search for business credit. It's one of the first searches that pops up. So what's happening is just by providing the education, I'm creating this massive community that includes buyers that I would never have if I wouldn't create the actual education. So it really stems from the education. You do that, the rest of the pieces kind of fall in place. You don't do that, you're just like everybody else out there trying to scrap and make a sale because you have no community that'll have your back.
Yeah. And the other thing I like about that, of course, is that is your ideal client then. The people that come into that community or the people that Facebook will then show your community to are the people who are the ideal client. So
Sure.
that, they're already interested in what you have to offer. So the selling's almost half done already.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. This has been fabulous, Ty. Where can people reach out and say thank you?
Well, we've got a great guide on our website, creditsuite.com/EIN. That's creditsuite.com/EIN. And if they go there, they can get a great guide on building business credit. The fundamental process of building business credit is the same no matter where you are in the world. But like you mentioned, some of the vendors, some of the bureaus, some of that stuff's a little bit different. But the fundamental process is the same, and it's all outlined there in that guide.
All right. Well, we'll have links to that in the show notes so that people can just click and go directly there. And I certainly encourage you to go and have a look at that and explore the idea some more. So what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in their field?
In my expertise, what it really comes down to is get money before you need it, because you're going to need it, and you're either financially prepared or not. And if you're not financially prepared, it does not typically end well. And if you are financially prepared, then you're brushing off things that really could have been severe that have no impact on you. So get money before you need it.
Yeah, great advice. And get financially prepared. So go through the processes that Ty's been talking about to us today. All right. Finally, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why?
Oh, man, there's so many great people to send over. But what I'll do is when we jump off the call, I'll look up some of my favorites and send them over to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Really appreciate that. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights so generously with us today on the InnovaBuzz podcast, Ty. I've really enjoyed this immensely. I've learned a lot. You've definitely stuck to your philosophy of providing a lot of information, and I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch.
Sounds good. Will do. Man, it's been an honor. Thanks again for having me on. You're an amazing host.
Oh, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that fascinating and informative conversation with Ty, and like me, found a lot of value in the information he shared. There are so many valuable tips and lessons in this interview. Some of the highlights for me were the importance of getting finance before you need it, and of course, being financially prepared to do so. Ty's philosophy of giving away information versus just selling, and the importance of building a community of fans. I'd love to know what you took away from Ty's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at innovabiz.co/Ty Crandall. That is TyCrandall, all lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Ty Crandall. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Ty there, as well as links to his website, the Credit Suite website, and the resources that we spoke about in the conversation, the free financial report and also the checklist. Ty suggested we interview Letitia Stiles, marketing consultant, lifestyle influencer and speaker, on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Letitia, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Ty Crandall. Remember to visit innovabiz.co/VIP to access the Transformational Marketing Hub and all its free and exceptionally useful information to help you transform your marketing. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review, because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.